All right. Hello, everybody. My name is Dr. Beth Solomon, and I am one of the academic coaches in the Center for Academic Success. So today we are going to talk a little bit about Chem 220, so our bioorganic chemistry. And Dr. Guest has been nice enough to actually let me be a member of your class on Moodle, so I'm able to see exactly what you see as students. Just so everybody knows, this is a pre-recorded study session and review. So if you have any other questions, please feel free to reach out to the Center for Academic Success, so CAS, C-A-S, at furman.edu, or if you're connected to an academic coach, reach out to them and they should be able to assist you a little bit further. So first we want to take a look at exactly what Dr. Guest has on his middle page. And I know that he spends a fair amount of time going over these things, but I think what's important is that we take a look at what tools we have to study for the future. This is a class that you're going to need to spend time every single day working on. And it's not just because it's an upper level bioorganic chemistry class, everything is building and there's a lot of material. And so if you actually go through and read the advice from past students of bioorganic chemistry, you'll see a lot of notes from people about the amount of time you need to spend each day reviewing. So what I'm trying to do here is to help you review more effectively and more efficiently. I think a lot of people think of studying as opening a textbook and putting their head down and really focusing on material. And there's not necessarily a hardcover textbook for this class. And how do you actually study for a class that can be a little bit intimidating and overwhelming? And the reality is you need to use the tools that are provided for you. So as you can see at the top, there's unrestricted office hours that Dr. Guest has. Use his office hours. They are so extremely beneficial and he will work with you one-on-one. He really encourages you. When I spoke to him, he encourages all of you to come and see him. I know it's not the same as if it were on campus, but send him an email, make an appointment, go to the Zoom office hours. He's willing to help. The second thing, well, it's the third thing on this list, is Catalyst student tutoring. So this is run through the chemistry department and it's Sunday through Thursday from 8 to 10 p.m. This is a great opportunity to review with other classmates and review with other chemistry majors and do some extra learning. And that really does count as review time and you can work through some homework stuff. Lastly, the Center for Academic Success is going to be doing a peer-assisted learning program, and that is going to be something that our office will have, and it will be up this week. So if you go to furman.edu/tutoring, that will take you to a link and you'll be able to get some more information on signing up for the peer-assisted learning. So those are starting this week, but in addition to all of that and the other help that you have, the real important stuff is that you have a lot of tools that Dr. Guest has given you on his Moodle site. So an example of that right now is exam 1. He has given you the exam that you have taken, and you can actually see the exam and go through it and work through the problems again. In addition to having the exam, what I find extremely helpful is the answer key, in which he has given you, and the breakdown of the points, and the retrospective. And so this is something that I think we need to take some time and review. So it is literally telling you exactly where those exam questions have come from. So exam 1, question 1, A is coming from slides 1-1 and 5-1 and problem 6-1. So if you had trouble on part A of problem 1, which is right here, we need to go back and review those slides. We need to review them and we need to actively work through the problem because organic chemistry and bioorganic chemistry is going to build off of each other. And so if you are missing things from part 1, part A, it is very likely that you're going to miss some things from the other pieces. So he has all of those retrospectives there for you and the problems. The other thing that I really, really appreciate is he has a whole folder called practice exams. And I don't know how many people went into these practice exams, but there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 exam 1s that you can actually go through and do all of the problems from. There are answer keys to all of them. And it's not just exam one, but it's all of your exams. So if we're not working through each and every exam, it's going to be really difficult to say, hey, I did my best, I tried my hardest, because you may have, but if we didn't use all of these to prepare further, I think we're doing ourselves a disservice. So you are able to actually go and work through exams. And you can see this is exam one from 2011 fall. Then we go to 13, 15, 17, and the spring exam. So he's not going to pull questions from those exams. It's likely the years that aren't listed. But if you read back on some of the information that other students gave you, those actually sometimes come from homework, and that's even better. There's also the retrospectives for those exams, this practice exam question lecture correlation chart. And it goes through and it tells you over here the exam, the year, so 2011 fall. Question 1 came from 2 and 3. Question 2 came from 5, 6, and 7, and those are the lecture numbers. Remote exams have changed a little bit from what they were when they were in person, so that's important to keep in mind. Also, I noticed that his exams are open note, open book, and so we need to organize our notes and be able to actually apply the material. So it's not just straight memorization, it's actual application. And so if you look at some of his study tips, it really spells out that what you will get as a part of the exam. So you will receive a chart of the 20 most common naturally occurring amino acids, and they're annotated, and this is how they're annotated. So you know what? Print out a copy of that, and you have a copy, and then let's go through and work through the practice exams. Everything is spelled out in terms of expectations, and for me, it's really key to think, okay, what are we doing to prepare ourselves a little bit more? What tools do I have? How am I practicing? What am I working through? And really, when you're studying for this class, you're going to want to practice the same way that you would actually take an exam. So have your notes out, understand what you're looking for, have your sheet that he would give you, and be able to fill out these written explanations. And he does give a breakdown of how to answer the short answer free response question study tips as well. So I think the biggest thing for me is work through exactly what he has. So if you look at these free questions, he spells out what he is looking for in terms of vocabulary, in terms of concepts. You have to be the one that says, okay, I have done enough and I have shown what I'm doing, but he is telling you the breakdown and he is giving you an example. So we need to spend some time breaking this apart and digging into it more. And if you do need help with that, in addition to this workshop that we're doing right now, I think it's important to reach out to our office, talk to somebody in Catalyst, talk to a peer assisted learning consultant and say, how do I do this better? And what can I do to gain more points? Additionally, Dr. Guest will do that with you one-on-one. And I think that that's important. The other thing that I would say is work together in groups. I am not a chemist by any stretch of the imagination, but when I sat down and I spoke to Dr. Guest, I said, you know, what are some things that we can do to help our students do better in your class? And one of the things he said was the science is never done alone at this point. It is a team effort and it is something that is done with others in groups. Get a group together. Even if you guys all didn't do your, the grade that you wanted on that first exam, my guess is if you put together all of your brains and all of your exams, you will have more right answers than wrong answers. And then you're able to work through and ask questions together. So that's the other thing that the peer assisted learning will do, is put people together in small groups, a max of 5, and actually use that time to talk through things. And so you can learn from each other as well as the learning consultant. You can learn from each other as well as the material, as well as from your professor. And so these are the things that I think are really important. And his class is just demanding. It's going to take time. You need to do the pre-reading. You need to do the homework, watching the lectures. Those are all important. He's got question and answers, problem sets, solution sets. Use the tools that he's provided, but if you aren't understanding the material, we need to actually step out and say, all right, where am I missing the link? What can I do to get some help? And how am I going to do that as soon as possible? Because this semester is just running. We're at the end of September. We don't have a fall break and we are going strong through Thanksgiving. And then we've got a couple days in finals. So let's use our time wisely. And the other thing is, The lectures are going to be dense. Instead of sitting in class for 50 minutes and watching every single lecture that you have, take breaks. Use your time wisely. Chunk out that material and say, okay, I'm going to watch lecture 1 because I've got an hour, and I'm going to take my notes and I'm going to understand what I did and I'm going to let it sit. And then I'm going to come back and watch lecture 2. Write down questions that you have, because those are, you can either put in the lecture Q&A or ask him one-on-one. But my guess is if you have questions, there are other people in your class that have questions as well. So that's kind of a brief overview of some of the tools that we have. And I am going to actually unmute people and see if anybody has any specific questions.
Is there like specific questions pertaining to the material or like strategies that we could use?
So probably more strategies, because I'm not an exact chemist, but if you are looking for some questions about where to find things, I could probably help with that.
Okay, I got you. So would it help to memorize mechanisms or try to understand a mechanism?
Good question. So this is where I would, and this is just a general, I'm going to answer your question, Charlie, but I'm also going to give some general tips that Dr. Guess has given. In terms of, you probably need to understand them. So if you are going to get a whole bunch of common naturally occurring amino acids and you're going to need to understand some pathways, you will probably need to do a little bit of both in terms of memorization, but also understand why they change that way. So, and I don't fully understand absolutely everything because I just haven't taken this class, but he says when drawing enzymatic mechanisms, you may use generic acid and base whenever appropriate. So you're going to need to determine, is it specific enough that you can use something specific, or is it generic? You just have to understand how they work. And if you understand how they work, you should be able, you should know how to draw them out, which is almost like memorizing them, but it's at a level higher than just straight memorization. Does that
Right.
help?
Yeah.
Everything that I have looked at and spoken to him about says that you really need to have a deep understanding of why things are happening. So you may memorize what the reaction is and why it does it, but you're going to need to explain why it's happening. And so if you're missing that part of why, that's where Catalyst or peer assisted learning and office hours will be more effective, because you can actually go with specific questions. And that's where I recommend looking at all of those old exams and saying, okay, is this something where I needed to memorize all these mechanisms, or is this something where I just need to understand the basic ideas? Did that help answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Everything that I read from former students and that I've spoken with all say, like, definitely study mechanisms daily.
Am I the only one in here?
I think right now you are, but we are recording. So if other people are looking for help, they can get this sent to them later.
No. So everyone can see me be awkward. That's great. Anyway.
You're not being awkward, Charlie.
Okay. Let's see. So like how many hours per week should we spend studying like things like mechanisms and reaction pathways and
So
that
that's a
sort of
really good question. I'm going to stop sharing for a second so I can pull up another screen that I think will be helpful. The amount that you study is going to vary by person. I think you don't necessarily need to quantify, I need to spend 8 hours a day on bioorganic chemistry. For me, what's important is, are you actually understanding the material? So you may find in one unit, you actually are able to grasp that quite quickly, and you don't need to spend more than an hour a day or a half an hour a day. Other units, you may need to spend 3 hours a day. And one of the things that I like to say is, do you understand it and are you able to do it day in and day out, use the resources that you have and perform well on the exam? So one of the things that I have spoken about in another workshop, which is actually on our website, and if you want to reference it later, you absolutely can, is the 5-day test prep. And this kind of breaks things down a little bit more. And the biggest thing is you're breaking your material up into 4 sections and you're spending a little bit more time on the older material. And this is where if you're spending time every single day reviewing, you're not cramming for an exam. That's where we tend to have downfall, because we are just, trying to jam everything into our brain, and we've got nerves and test anxiety and everything else, and it's not necessarily productive. So each day before an exam, you should be spending time preparing and reviewing. And so that helps. And it breaks it down a little bit more. The other thing I would say is using our study cycle is extremely helpful, because you spend time preparing before you go to class. So before you go to class, you should spend some time saying, okay, what did my pre-reading, there's pre-reading for every single class, right? And pre-homework. Okay, so before I go to lecture
Right.
1, I'm going to do my pre-reading. There's no pre-homework, so I don't have to worry about it. And I've looked over the template for our lecture. So I know that when I go to class, we're going to be looking at these certain, amino acids, and we're going to be learning about them. And so I know we're going to specifically be looking at this. So when I go to class, in my mind, I'm already ready to focus on what's there. Then you're going to go to class and take notes and pay attention. And that's where, since things are remote, all right, I'm going to break up my lectures. I'm going to focus just on this first amino acid chain that we're looking at. All right. So we're going to spend the time for lecture 1 looking at this first slide. I'm going to take my notes. I'm going to absorb it. I'm going to come back and watch the other lectures. Then I'm going to let it sit. I'm going to look back over my notes and see if I missed anything. Write down any questions that you have. And then I would take those to Dr. Guest during those open office hours that he has during the class periods that you meet in. And so you're able to ask specific questions about the lecture and where you might be missing something. If you're still not grasping it, that's where we need to do the catalyst and the peer assisted learning. So that may take you a half an hour total. It may take you an hour total. I think it comes down to, can you do the exam problems that have to do with those lectures? And if you can do them comfortably, then we're in a good place. And that's where using that file of all of the practice exams and look at the lecture correlation sheet. Okay, I just did lecture 9, and I'm going to go and take the spring 2020 test and do question 3. And if I can do that, then I'm good. If I can't do that, then I need to go back and review and ask some more questions. So I don't think there's necessarily a recipe for time. It's where are you comfortable and how are you spending your time each day? If you're doing the pre-reading and the pre-homework, going to class, reviewing your notes, asking questions, doing the homework, and then doing that cycle all over again, you're probably going to be much more successful and productive than if you only do pieces of it.
Right.
So I'm going to grab another reference to pull up so you can see that as well. So that's what we call the study cycle. And that's where we are trying to be much more efficient with our actual learning, because there's just so much to what learning takes, what takes place. So those study sessions, those are the ones that are going to be really focused. And I would say start by planning like 50 minutes to an hour. But when you go into them, say, this is what I'm going to do. I've got several sessions per week, start with 1 per day. It might be 2 per day. It really depends what you need to understand the material, but make a goal for the session. If you say I'm going to review all of lecture 1, then that's what you're going to do during that session. Going into a study session and saying, I'm just going to study bioorganic chemistry, but what part of it? Are you going to focus on your mechanisms today? Are you going to focus on your chain reactions? Are you going to try a practice test? That's where you just need to be focused, and you have a goal for that session, and that's what you're going to do in that time period. When you get to the end of the time period, step away for a couple minutes, take a break. Am I at a place where I need to keep going, or do I need to stop and change subjects? Do I need to recap? Am I done for the day? Um, all of that is a big thing. And then checking, can you explain your homework, or can you explain the practice problem on the exam in the format that Dr. Guest is looking for, or to somebody who doesn't understand it? If the answer is no, then we might need to reassess our study styles and see what we can do. If the answer is yes, and you got the problem right on the exam and we've checked the answer key, awesome. Check it off your list. You got that.
I guess another question I was
Yeah.
kind of thinking of while you were talking about all of that, and this kind of pertains to the, you you have to customize it to how you are as a person, right? But
hmm
when we're doing the lectures every week, like, uh, is there like a good amount of times that we should review them every week in order to be like kind of solid with them?
So you have the benefit of being able to watch them as many times as you want. And
Right.
that makes things a little bit different. I would say the tough part is, it's time. So I always say schedule time to do your class lecture watching. Um, I would usually say do it during that class time, but I also know that's when he has drop-in office hours that we really should utilize. And so, watch the lectures and take notes as if you can't watch them again. But if you run into questions, you can watch them again. And that's the neat part.
Right.
So when you watch them, that's where we want to have like our computer and phone on do not disturb. We have all the materials. We're going to actually take our notes. It's like acting like you're in class. But if you do need to go back, you can. But I
Gotcha.
don't know
Yeah.
the most effective way of studying. For me personally, watching all the lectures again would not be a good use of my time. A better use of my time would be saying, I'm going to go through this practice exam, then I'm going to go through the answer key. What did I do right? What did I not do right? And then I'm going to look at the retrospective and say, okay, here's where those slides for those questions came from in the lectures. I'm going to go back and look at those pieces. And if I still don't understand it, I'm going to listen to that lecture again.
Gotcha.
It's a lot of self-discipline, but he's really giving you tools to be successful in his class. But if you don't know how to use them, it makes it much more challenging to actually be successful.
And I guess for those people who like maybe have like bad study habits or low self-discipline, like how do you help that like to become, I guess, better at lighting the fire under your tail, you know?
Yeah, great question. Well, I think one is you get to drop one exam in Dr. Guess's class. If your first one wasn't great, that's the one we should aim to drop. We don't want to be lower than that. In fact, we want to see great improvements throughout the semester. And so these focused study sessions that you see over in this box, are you able to see that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's really, I would say, the best way to start planning out a study session. Set yourself some goals, 30 to 50 minutes, and then reassess where you are. In terms of actually scheduling your time during the day, on our website, we have a fall schedule that is planned out and laid out just like the academic class schedule. And so what I recommend is, and I'll pull it up so you can see it, I recommend going through and saying, okay, here are when my classes are, here's when I'm working, here's when I, am commuting if I have to commute or if I'm in the library, and really planning out your time every single minute of the day, because you should be using your daytime hours to be productive. Yes, you're going to have to do work at night, but if you are doing work during the day, we shouldn't be doing as much work at night. And so I say plan things out and say, here's when I'm going to do work. So this is what our class schedule looks like for the fall semester. Obviously, there's 20 minutes in between classes. And so I would say, block off those times. So if you have an 8 a.m. Monday, Wednesday, Friday, print this out, download it, block the time off. I've got class here, here, and here. Okay, I don't have anything at 9:10, so I'm going to watch my chemistry lectures, 1 and 2 during that time. and then I'm going to go to his office hours at 10:20, and then my next class is at 12:40, so I'm going to eat lunch in this block here. Plan out your day and then hold yourself accountable to it. I use it like a checklist. What am I going to do on those days, and what am I going to do during those time periods? And it's not an overnight change. I think that's the hardest part, and that's what we have to really be cognizant of and aware of, is it takes time to build habits. And just like we built the habits before of potentially procrastinating or waiting a little bit longer because we just didn't have to study as hard, or how do you study, this is the time where we make small changes that should have big impacts. So if you plan out some time and you make goals for your study session, you should be much more productive during that hour, rather than just saying, I'm going to study, but I don't have a subject that I'm going to study for. I don't have a goal for that study session. It's very easy to start playing on our phone or checking email or, social media or reading the news. Whereas if it's focused, you say, okay, I have an hour to get this done. I'm going to get it done.
Right.
So it's a work in progress. And the reality is, even if you're good at it, there's always adjustments that have to be made. And so we're always learning more about ourselves, and we're learning a little bit more about how we learn and how we study and how we're productive. And so, if it's not working, then let us know so we can kind of readjust and say, all right, that wasn't the best plan for us. Let's try again. But we need to start practicing that before we get to exam two, because, exam two is going to come around the corner pretty fast.
Yeah, it's coming up soon.
It is. It's crazy, but this is just, this typically happens at this time of year, and then add in the fact that we started a week earlier and we don't have any long weekends or breaks, and it's just rapid fire.
Yeah, it's a little crazy.
It is. We'll get through it. The reality is everybody cares about your performance, and everybody cares about how you're doing in class and wanting you to get the most out of it. So that's why we're doing a session like this. That's why Dr. Guest has all those office hours. He'll also, if you request them, he'll do one-on-one office hours instead of just drop in. So, I mean, great resource. And he's really good at teaching things, because he could explain things that you guys are doing in your class to me. And I haven't taken chemistry since high school. And it made sense.
Wow.
He's very talented.
Yeah, he's a pretty cool dude. I like him too.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's a tough class, but we're going to get through it. Do you have any other questions?
I'm trying to think. Sorry.
Okay, that's all right. If you don't, I mean, that's fine as well. I want to make sure that if you have some, we give you time to ask them.
Right. Would it be useful to, like, I don't know, utilize like the catalysis tutoring as much as possible?
The Catalyst tutoring, yes. Yeah, that and the peer assisted learning is, you're not limited, and it's paid for. So I would absolutely use it. And if you find that you work really well with one of the consultants in either of those situations, keep working with them, because you'll build a good relationship with them. And if they're helping you, you're going to want to have that and not have to like adjust your learning style again.
Right.
Yeah, but I absolutely would take advantage of all the free help that you get. And then when you go to office hours, you're able to say, I've done Catalyst, I've done peer assisted learning. I went to the Center for Academic Successes workshop on reviewing and studying for this class. Here are the questions that I still have, or here's the material that I still am struggling to understand. Is there another way I can look at it? And again, studying in groups in addition to all of those things is going to be beneficial. So there's not necessarily like the same recipe for every student in that class to be successful, but there are some general
Yeah,
things that can help. And again, it's just really based on how you learn and what is working and what's not working. So what I would recommend doing is, how did you study for exam one? Write it out, write what you did do, write what you didn't do, um, make changes based off of that.
yeah,
So if you didn't do practice exams, that's something that makes it a lot easier to study because you're actually reviewing everything. All of the homework problems. He sometimes pulls exam questions straight from the homework. Doing the pre-reading and getting yourself ready for class, so you're able to focus a little bit better. Do you understand the goals of what he's trying to teach you that class? Those are things that are all going to help bring your level of learning that much higher.
yeah.
So those are my big tips. And know that he's really there to help you as well.
I guess this next question could seem like, I don't know, maybe a bit controversial, but
Well, try it.
is it useful to utilize, like, I don't know, like outside sources if you say like it's nighttime and you can't reach your professor, but you do have a question, like maybe like looking at Kim Weaver text or a textbook or something.
So are you talking about for an exam, or are you talking about to try to solve a homework problem?
I just solve a homework, yeah, pretty much to solve a homework problem.
So I think what we need to do is read over what he expects in terms of homework. I don't have a problem with looking at resources. I think that utilizing all of them is appropriate, but we need to go and look at what his syllabus says and what is the things that you need to do for the homework. Because I know for the exams, it says that you cannot use outside sources.
Yeah, yeah,
So, and I think that that's probably, I would have to go pull the whole syllabus again. I do know that he doesn't do a textbook because a lot of that stuff is already posted online. So I would check all of that first. I would also reread the syllabus and say, what does it say about homework? And if you have a question about it, ask him, say, hey, if I'm stuck doing, trying to get through a problem at night, I would recommend checking a um, checking with a classmate if you can. But the biggest thing is we don't want to end up in an academic integrity issue for anybody. So that's where I want to say, like, double check what you can actually use for homework assignments. Um, I'm trying to skim through right now and I'm not necessarily seeing a lot on homework. And so that's where I would ask him. I do notice that it says that you should be able to have any like organic chemistry textbook as a review. And that's where that might help you.
yeah,
The biggest thing I would say is clarify. We know for exams it's a big no. I can almost guarantee that he would rather you ask that question than do something and end up in an academic integrity mess.
yeah. No one wants that.
No, absolutely not. And that's where, asking those questions is going to be better. Yeah, I don't see anything on homework, so I would clarify with him for sure. Anything else?
Not right now.
Okay. Well, I am going to stop recording, and I'm going to hang on here. So if you do have other questions, you absolutely can ask, but we'll just stop.